Donald Trump is bringing in a bunch of tanks for the 4th of July, and everybody's asking me, Tim, are you gonna go down to DC to see the tanks? No, I'm not. I think it's silly, and I think people are right to criticize Trump for having a bunch of tanks in DC to stroke his ego. But I certainly do not believe that putting a bunch of tanks on display is some kind of authoritarian nightmare where you've got some people actually equating it to Tiananmen Square. Please, it's decoration as far as I'm concerned. That's nuts. I'll tell you what is disconcerting to me. There have been many Democrats who have made statements that actually are authoritarian, such as this woman, Frederica Wilson, who said people should be prosecuted for making fun of members of Congress. Now listen, you have heard me say this time and time again, if you watch my channel, that one of the greatest things about America is that I can walk up to anyone, politician, billionaire, or otherwise, and say, F you. You can't, there's limits, like you can't run up to somebody in their face or anything, but no, I can look to, I'm not going to get arrested. I'm not going to be prosecuted for telling this woman, for swearing. Look, I'm not going to swear at her or insult her, because you know what kind of person I am, but absolutely not. In America, we're allowed to tell politicians whatever we want for the most part, like you can't threaten them or incite violence. She does bring that up. The point I'm trying to make is I can make fun of you all I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's why this country is great. But it's not just Frederica Wilson. There have been other people calling for censorship, and I covered this recently when Elizabeth Warren said that tech companies should be taking down lies because they're racist. Just because someone has a conversation you don't like doesn't mean you can take them down. So here's what we're going to do. Let's take a look at various instances where we have seen the freakish authoritarianism emerging on the left, and I've got a bunch of stories for you. But before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a monthly donation option, a crypto option, a physical address, but of course, the best thing you can do, share this video. YouTube no longer suggests my videos in the same way as everyone else on YouTube. It's true for all political channels. If you think my content is good, I ask you to share it, to suggest it to other people. But let's read the news. From the Daily Wire's Ryan Saavedra. Democratic Rep. Frederica Wilson led a congressional delegation to inspect an immigration detention facility on Tuesday. And following her visit, she said that people who are making fun of members of Congress online should be prosecuted. She really did. Seriously. It's like, come on, man. She's okay. They went inside around 1 p.m. This is a quote. They went inside around 1 p.m. with the purpose of investigating the conditions that migrant children are living in, CBS Miami reported. Joining Wilson was fellow South Florida Rep. Donna Shalala, Rep. Benny Thompson, Brenda Lawrence, Yvette Clark, Catherine Clark, John Lewis, and Madeline Dean. Here's the quote. Those people who are online making fun of members of Congress are a disgrace, and there is no need for anyone to think that is unacceptable, Wilson said during a press conference. We are going to shut them down and work with whoever it is to shut them down, and they should be prosecuted. First, let's go over the weird... Wait. There's no need for anyone to think that it's unacceptable. Right, that's a double negative. She's saying it is acceptable, but you know what she was trying to say. Because she goes on to say, we are going to shut them down. Look, I get it. That can be, if you're not going to take it literally, it could just mean like, we're going to rise up to the challenge. It could mean we're going to be louder than them. But when she goes on to say they should be prosecuted, we know what she actually means. She is saying, as a government actor who is being ridiculed, she wants to shut down the speech and arrest people, prosecute them for insulting her, for making fun of her. Sorry, that's not the way it works. Now, this is just one small story, right? She does go on to say you can't threaten members of Congress. She's right in that regard, but she's wrong in the regard you can prosecute somebody for being mean to you. This is the direction things have been going for a long time. Okay, the regressive left type individuals have been saying things like, people say I'm crazy and stupid on the internet. Yeah, well, that's too bad. But what happens? Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they actually create policies saying no being mean to people on the internet. Now, look, from a personal ethics and philosophical perspective, I agree. Don't be mean to people. Like, I can be mean sometimes. I'll say someone's stupid or insane, but rarely. You guys, like, I'm not even willing to tell her off and swear at her because that's just not who I am. Although I certainly respect the right of individuals to do that. It is what makes this country great. We have the right to challenge those in power, right? Plain and simple. But we have this movement where people are burning free speech signs. They're saying bigotry and hate speech. You can't, like, they don't want you being mean on the internet. But what's crazy is, and here's where it gets interesting, They are mean on the internet. They say mean things, and it's okay. They say speech is violence, but throwing milkshakes isn't. We know the game. You can see the game they're playing. It's not all of the Democrats, but it's too many of them. You know, I'm personally a fan of Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, and now I'm actually a bit of a fan of Marianne Williamson because I think she's just like this fun hippie lady, and it's kind of fun to hear her talk and like see her tweets. You get it. But Yang and Gabbard have been pretty consistent on free speech, and I can respect that. Unfortunately, there are too many Democrats who are not consistent and are just playing up for tribal reasons. Let's take a look at some of the other terrifying authoritarian instances we've seen so far. Elizabeth Warren saying it is within the power and obligation of tech companies to stop these vile lies dead in their tracks. This is Elizabeth Warren saying that social media companies, tech companies, should be... Okay, so let's break this down. What does it really mean to stop the vile lies? Well, she's not necessarily saying to ban speech. She is, right? I'm not going to take her statements literally because how do you stop words in their tracks? You can't. But figuratively, what she's saying essentially is tech companies are obligated to shut down speech. Plain and simple. But I did do a video on this, and I have many more stories I want to go through in terms of the authoritarian left. In this story, and we'll come back to speech issues, we will. In this story, this is an opinion piece from just the other day. Kamala, the cop, reiterates promise to take executive action on guns if Congress won't. Look, you want to have a debate on guns, fine, by all means. But what are we looking at? We're looking at a congresswoman saying we're going to prosecute mean speech. We're looking at Elizabeth Warren saying the tech companies should stop this speech. So there's two authoritarian calls for action in different ways, from the government, from the private sector. And now Kamala Harris saying that if she gets elected, she will take executive action on guns, something the president doesn't have the authority to do. Once again, this is an authoritarian stance of trying to impose their will on others. Listen, if they're going to take the position that they're allowed to do it and other people aren't, and they want to push their will on you, basically, not only is it authoritarian, but it's like you're not even consistent in what your authoritarianism is. So that shows what you're really on about is personal power. If they said hate speech should be banned and I will ban it, and they banned the left and the right, well, okay, well, they're authoritarian, but at least they're consistent. What we're seeing here is nothing to do with actual principle, but what I see is I want power. That's what they're saying when they do this. But don't worry, I got a lot more. In this story, we saw a while ago, February 8th, 2019, Democratic Congresswoman threatens Black Republican teenager, quote, "You're right to be afraid of us." Naturally, this woman got heavy pushback. This was Rep. Nadia Velazquez. She told CJ Pearson, "I'm not the woman sitting next to AOC," to her, "and I and millions like us are the future of this country, and you're right to be afraid of us. But you should learn my name." What does that mean? We're the future of this country. This is a Hispanic woman telling a young black conservative, they're the future and he should be afraid. Does that sound racist? So this is another good example of kind of the hypocrisy. They talk about intersectionality. They talk about marginalized groups, but we've all seen it, right? They attacked Andy Ngo. Did they care about his identity? Of course they didn't. These are we are seeing the mask slip where they are full on authoritarian. And what's really crazy to me, I've got a couple more stories I want to go through in terms of speech and the rhetoric, but then I want to show you how when it came to Andy Ngo, and you probably know this already, but we're going to go through it. They have lied. They have spread lies. They are trying to justify violence. Let's move on. Casa Cortez hit back at her critics with, quote, "I am the boss" over the Green New Deal. Once again, we can see how she really feels. There have been people who have been trying to solve the environmental crisis for a long time. Many organizations. In fact, I will tell you this, I was one of them. I worked for 2 different environmental organizations, nonprofits, to raise awareness and help solve these problems. She is not the only one trying to do this, but that's what she said. And she said, "I'm the boss." So what's the actual quote they have? She says, "I just introduced the Green New Deal 2 weeks ago, and it's creating all this conversation. Why? Because no one else has even tried. Some people are like, oh, it's unrealistic. Oh, it's vague. It doesn't address this minute thing. And I'm like, you try, you do it, because you are not. Until you do, I'm the boss. How about that?" So let me back up. We've seen them say silent speech. We've seen them say, I will use executive action. We've seen them call on the government and the private sector to silence speech. Now we can see the ego and the narcissism. Casa Cortez really believes she's the only one trying. She's not. Major unions have been trying. In fact, the AFL-CIO, one of the largest labor unions in the world, came out and said, we have been working on these issues for decades because we are people who work these jobs. Of course, we want to solve these problems. But not only does she think she's the only one doing it, she says, I'm the boss. That is kind of a terrifying delusion. Because she doesn't know other people are working on this, she assumes she has the right to be in charge. That's another layer of the authoritarianism. But let's we'll carry on here. Here's another one. This is where Casa Cortez now denigrates those who challenge her by saying, we're in charge and you're just shouting from the cheap seats. Now, I've highlighted this, and people claimed I lied for bringing this up. No, Casa Cortez literally said, you're in the cheap seats and we're in charge. It's now about class. She can claim to fight for all the marginalized groups. She can claim to fight for the poor. But when it comes down to it, she says, you're in the cheap seats and we're in charge. They've expressed their desire to silence our speech, to call on tech companies, the government. They've called on, using executive authority to impose their will, and they're telling us we're in the cheap seats. Now, what I find truly alarming is outside of just the Democrats. It's how the left in the media has defended and encouraged the violence. This story from Human Events. Twitter elites celebrate brutal Antifa attack on Andy Ngo. Excuse me. Antifa's attack on journalist Andy Ngo was met with glee by Twitter's elite blue checkmark brigade, who expressed their support for their militant leftists. Now this, I want to highlight not only the support for overt violent authoritarianism, but the complete hypocrisy. Again, to reiterate, it's not about principle. They're not coming out here to say we should defend these people. They're coming out to say, I want power. Here's an example. Charlotte Clymer, as my understanding, works with the Human Rights Campaign, of which I have fundraised for in the past. They fight for LGBT rights. Yes, Tim Pool has fundraised, one of the top fundraisers of the time, for the Human Rights Campaign fighting for LGBT rights. I did that. Now I'm shocked to see someone justifying a brutal assault on a gay man. And it is. She said that Andy Ngo intentionally provokes people on the left to drive his content. Being attacked today on video taken by an actual journalist is the greatest thing that could have happened to his career. You know it, I know it, he knows it, we all know it, yes. Andy Ngo, who received a brain hemorrhage. So add up all of these instances, and I'll say this. You want to talk about edge cases, right? So I've mentioned this, in a conversation with David Pakman, and David said he believes the regressive left types they're edge cases, meaning they're rare instances. They don't happen all the time. I think it's fair to point out that to a certain degree it is rare, but it's the most prominent, okay? Certainly not every Democrat is endorsing this. No, many are calling it out. CNN called it out, of all people, because they've defended Antifa in the past. But there are a lot of Democrats, even Eric Swalwell condemned this. Jake Tapper condemned it, Andrew Yang condemned it. So yes, regular Democrats, even if they are starting to push to the far left, will still call this out. Here's the problem. The influencers of the left, those with the most followers. Yes, there's not that many people who have as many followers as they do, but it's because they're on top. This is an individual. These are multiple individuals who are advocating extreme violence, and they're verified left-wing individuals who are leading the charge. We can look to the grassroots efforts of Democrats and see that for the most part, they want regular things. They want to improve healthcare. But when you look at who's leading the conversation, look no further than the Democratic debates. They endorsed healthcare for illegal immigrants. They don't want to deport illegal immigrants. So here we can see it is not regular Democrats who are concerned about immigration who are leading the pack. It is these voices who are encouraging authoritarianism and running defense for it. The hilarious thing is when you can see the overt disinformation campaigns being led. Now, I'll say this, listen, there are fringe right-wing groups that engage in disinformation campaigns. They're not in media. They don't work for Vox. They're not working for BuzzFeed. They don't work for massive prominent institutions. Their symbols aren't being flown by corporate brands. They don't appear on MSNBC. The fringe right-wing groups were condemned wholeheartedly by most conservatives. What about the left? Continuing to endorse this. Charlotte Clymer of the Human Rights Campaign, a mainstream prominent organization, Casa Cortez, Kamala Harris, these are politicians pushing this stuff. And of course, as we know, The tablet magazine and the New York Times outed far-left Democrats who are prominent, mainstream, and supported for being anti-Semites. Linda Sarsour. Then we saw the statements from Ilhan Omar. Listen, man, I don't like bigotry and hate speech and people being mean, but I'm not getting that from, say, human events. Are there mean conservatives? Certainly there are. Human events, for instance, is a more well-thought-out conservative approach, talking about the things they support. I disagree with most of the conservative positions, except for liberty, because Americans believe in liberty. You can be liberal and believe in liberty. Unfortunately, who's leading the charge? So back to this tweet. It's like I clicked it over and I didn't talk about it. Look, Robbie Sove, he's a Reason editor, said, "Trolls have been tweeting this doctored fake screenshot of an article I supposedly wrote. My actual article made no such claims and included a vastly different headline. If this is the evolved form of fake news, it's mildly terrifying. I have asked Twitter to take action." They took his article where he said, Antifa mob viciously assaults journalist Andy Ngo, and they edited it, took a screenshot, and now it reads, Andy Ngo hires Proud Boys to pose as Antifa and attack him at a rally. This screenshot is now going around, and guess what we see? Once again, the mainstream left. Here we have this story from Canada's National Observer. I'm not going to act like this is the New York Times, but Carolyn Orr writes an article arguing it's all a disinformation campaign to make Antifa look bad. That's actually not true. There are certainly people who are exaggerating, who are taking things further than, what we can confirm. That's fair, but it's not disinfo. The Portland police said in a statement that one of their officers witnessed someone putting something like consistent with quick drying cement. They saw it in a cup. This is an actual statement. A journalist, a woman who I'm not actually a fan of because she smeared me in the past, but she got a statement where the police said they saw what looks like quick concrete in a cup. So they put the tweet out. They should. It couldn't result in chemical burns. It was the right thing to do. Andy Ngo doesn't believe that what he was hit with had any quick drying cement in it. He said that. Excellent. But many people were concerned that's what had happened because the police had said they had information. Do you think the police are lying? They're calling it a disinformation campaign. Okay, great. You think it's a conspiracy now. Seriously, they're getting to the point of conspiracy theories where they're arguing the Portland police put out misinformation and then no, listen, when they put out information saying they saw it happen, then it's likely the case. I don't think the police are conspiring against Antifa. That's absurd. Certainly don't think the police like Antifa. But the Portland police probably put out a statement because that's what they saw. And now we can see these articles saying it's an attempt to smear Antifa as violent. Are you joking? It was Antifa who got violent. They get violent all the time. But here we are. So we'll pull up a little bit more. This is a statement from Donald Trump Jr. The media was complicit in a brutal assault on an innocent conservative journalist. Andy Ngo is not engaged in any violent activities. He just has opinions they don't like. And it's really scary how a lot of the answer, like a lot of the responses we see is, what did you think was going to happen when you opposed us? I kid you not. One guy from the New York Times wrote, he should have known this would happen. So which is it? Is Antifa violent and you'll defend them because they should have known better? Is Antifa not really violent and it's a disinformation campaign? None of that matters. The main point that I want to get across in this video is that we have seen an increase on the Democratic side of authoritarianism, defense of it, and lies to protect it. So I want to do a quick sweep, and I'm going to end with one more segment that I think is actually kind of funny. What did we see so far? A woman saying we should prosecute those who make fun of Congress people. Someone saying that big tech companies are obligated to remove vile things she thinks are lies. Okay. 2 government actors calling on government and private sector. Kamala Harris threatening to use executive action to get through what she wants. We can see a Democratic congresswoman saying you should fear us. We've got Casa Cortez saying I'm the boss and you're in the cheap seats. Then it comes to the physical violence and we can see the media defending it. It doesn't exist on the mainstream right the way it does on the left. I think all of the far right extremist crazy people, by all means, lock them up, throw away the key. I'm talking about the violent ones who are threatening communities, who are engaging in hate crimes like physical violence against people. Lock them up. If you commit a crime, you go to jail. But these people aren't in Congress. You can argue Steve King, sure, but they stripped him of all his committees. The Republicans said, get him out of here. We don't want him. What about the Democrats? What about Ilhan Omar? What about her statements? What about Ocasio-Cortez speaking at the Women's March, which was put on by known anti-Semites? It's all mainstream. And I'll tell you where it ends. Nike triggered Joe Scarborough tweets epic vent against woke Democrats. Joe Scarborough went on a tirade because the Democrats have gone off the rails. Absolutely, in my opinion. And you know what? Do I have this? I don't have the story pulled up, but there is a New York Times, another graph showing the Republicans going a little to the right, but the left going just off the rails. And here we can see it. He says Democratic candidates now support universal health care for illegal immigrants, making illegally crossing America's borders legal, and a return to forced busing. He went on a huge tirade saying the woke Democrats essentially are going to cost the Democrats 2020. Trump's going to win. And now we see Mayor Willie Brown saying no Democrat can win, not even Kamala Harris. It's over. Trump won. And it's true. But you know what? It was really interesting to see Lindsey Graham say this. I think it was during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing. He said, y'all want power, and God, I hope you never get it. And it's so crazy to me because, man, I do not like Lindsey Graham. I never did. I never liked any of these Republicans. But I got to tell you, a weird thing has happened where liberal Tim Pool, the mixed race, pro-social justice individual, has now found that the left has shown all of these signs of authoritarian violence and the restriction of speech and threats and egotism and narcissism, and it's terrified me. I don't see myself voting for a Republican. I really don't. But I'll tell you this, the Democrats have lost me for sure. I will support Tulsi Gabbard because she's pushed back against censorship. She said identity politics is divisive. She's defended free speech, and her main policy position is anti-war, and that actually is something that unifies conservatives and liberals anti-war. So I can respect her, but I see them cheating. I don't see them giving her a chance. So what are we left with? Authoritarian leftists who are violent, who are slowly, becoming more prominent in Congress, who are identitarian, and that's worrisome, and it's only getting worse. Final thought on the matter. Here we are with a politician saying, prosecute those who make fun of us. You may think it's just one silly woman saying one silly thing, but you know what? It desensitizes us. It's grains of sand in a heap. If this kind of rhetoric persists, we will come to a point where people say, so what? Look, it's just, listen, you shouldn't make fun of politicians. What do they say now? Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequence. They say, but my private platform. Now we've moved on from there to government. Burping. Now we've moved on to actual politicians not only saying big tech is obligated to remove these people, but they should be prosecuted. Where do you think this goes next? I'll just say it. I say it all the time. Where do you think it goes next? Where do you think we'll be in the next year or two? Trump is going to win. How do you think they will react? They're going to go nuts. They started fires. They torched a limo. They were throwing bricks. It was insanity at the last inauguration. What do you think is going to happen when Trump wins again? I just see this getting worse every day. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment will be at youtube.com/TimCastNews starting at 6 p.m. for those on the podcast. The order is different, but I will have another segment coming up shortly. The podcast will be up every day at 6:30 p.m. And again, timcast.com/donate if you want to support my work, or just share the video on YouTube. Share the video wherever you can if you think people should watch it. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you on the next story.